Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week at CFSA. My name is Nick Wood, and I serve as the Policy Director here at CFSA. And I'm very excited today to welcome George Teague, owner of Reedy Fork Organic Farms, and also a Soil and Water District Supervisor in Guilford County. And we're excited today to talk about issues of climate and soil health and everything that George does on his farm and farmers do across our states and across our country to be part of the solution for climate change. So we're going to have a great opportunity to learn about George and his farm, about some of the practices that he employs that benefits our land and our soil and our water, and also learn a little bit more about what we can do as a public to support farms and farmers who are utilizing these practices. So I want to welcome our audience and thank you for joining us, and turn it over to George to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about his farm and the work that they do.
Okay, hello. I'm George Teague. I'm the fifth generation farmer here at Reedy Fork Organic Farm. We're a dairy. We've been a dairy farm since 1950, and then in 2007 we became certified organic, and then we didn't have a place for feed to come from, so we started milling grain here for us and the other Organic Valley dairy farmers here, and then we had local neighbors, and then it spread out over the southeast of people that wanted our grain. So we started selling grains and have our own product line of feeds for any kind of animal. And then we do have chickens then in addition to that. So we have about 1,000 layers that we sell our eggs at Weaver Street markets.
Excellent. Well, that's really exciting. And you've also been a CFSA member for quite a long time.
Yeah, probably close to 15 years, I guess we've been members of CFSA.
Well, we're so glad to have you, and we're really excited to have you here. I want to start us out kind of broad, kind of big, and hear from you a little bit about the role that you see that farmers have in mitigating climate change and improving the world around us.
Well, farming is just such a big part of the environment and an important part of everything on this earth. So it's only natural for it's important for us to be worried about climate, and it's important of what the soil has to do with climate change, because the soil, there's more soil here on the earth, makes up a lot of everything. So what we can do in it makes a huge difference. And what I always like to say, there's more living, more life in the soil than there is on top of the soil. It's really important to have your soils working right. And we have mined everything out of the soils, all of the minerals out of the soil over the years. So it's important to start worrying about the soils and putting it back.
Yeah, and there's a lot more information these days coming out about the ability of healthy soils to sequester carbon as well, right?
That's correct. That's correct. And that's why it's important, some of the practices that we can employ and to use to make things better for the soil and build up the soil and build up the organic matter in the soil.
Yeah, and George, when we spoke before this program, you told me a whole lot about the various practices that you've used over a great deal of time to improve the health of your soils on your farm. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I always say my grandfather father and my father both always use cover crops and always use crop rotations. And over the years, it's gotten more important for farmers to do it economically than it was to do the right things to take care of the soil, to put your organic matter back in the soil. That's why it's important to raise cover crops during times that you're not raising an actual crop. If you have a cover crop on the soil, then it's not only keeping the soil from having bare ground there to wash away and be baked in the sun, you're also growing nutrient that can be worked back into the soil and help to feed those microbes in the soil.
Are there any other practices that you use? You've talked a bit about cover cropping and about about rotation. Are there any other practices that you want to share with the audience?
Well, and most farmers, and including us on some of it, when we can organically with no till. the no-till is really a big important thing to not be working the soil so much that leaves it worked up so it can wash away during these big rains and everything that we've had. It's been important to have something there to hold the soil down to keep it from washing away.
So beyond even the climate benefits and the benefits to your farm, it also plays a major role in preventing erosion.
That's correct.
Which is a big deal.
Yes, and especially with, like I said, because now seems like we get more rain, but it always comes in waves of either we have a lot of rain for months at a time, or either we have lots of times with no rain. So that's why it's important. And our soils, the more organic matter you have in the soil, then the better they can tolerate droughts and that kind of thing we have.
Yeah, and I think that's a really key point to talk about, because I think anybody who's been paying attention to the weather has seen a great deal of unpredictability and severity, as you're talking about. Can you, as someone who's been farming, a generational farmer, can you talk a little bit about kind of the changes you've seen in recent years?
Well, it's just, it used to be different cycles in different times of the year, just like it always in February. It always seems like February or 1st of March that there'll be a little bit of a dry spell during, winter is always wet or usually wet, and you can't get much done. But it seems like always when I was younger, it was, you had a spell there that you could get your top dressing done or spring seeding of grasses or legumes to get that sown during that winter time, springtime, to get it done. Now it seems like you never know when you're going to have that. You never know when you're going to have enough rain to keep things going, or it's just either way. It's one extreme or the other, it seems like.
Yeah, it sounds like, and I've heard it said that farmers are the ultimate gamblers.
That's for sure.
Well, I would say that we're quite glad that you're doing that work, because all of us benefit from the food and the dairy and from everything else that you produce. Tell me a little bit more about some of the benefits you see on your farm from taking care of your soil.
Well, it's like I said, that with taking care of the soil, then if your soils are healthy, then your animals are healthy, your plants are more healthy, and therefore your food you eat is more healthy. That's why it's important for everything. It's just like the pH you want in the soil is the same thing that's in our bodies. So that shows you how important it is for everything to be in balance with each other so that we can remain healthy.
So you wear two hats in addition to a farmer hat. You also serve as a soil and water district supervisor in Guilford County, and so you get to see these issues on a broader scale as well. Tell me a little bit first about what made you decide to serve your community in that way.
Well, for one thing, just I've always been here on the farm, and it's always been an important thing to take care of the land and our water for us and for future generations. And that would just seem like a natural good thing to do, to be a part of that.
Well, tell me a little bit more about what you do in your role as soil and water district supervisor to support farms and farmers who are doing work to support healthy soil and water in our communities.
Well, the biggest thing we're able to do is with the cost share program, to the money that is appropriated from the legislature to put best management practices on the ground, being in whichever things that they do. Then we can, people have their proposals of what they want to do on their farms, and then we can rank it and see who we have money to pay to. We pay up to 75% on most of the stuff for practices that are qualified for it. So that's why it works well for them to be able to do that, and help them to give them a little nudge to do some of the practices that they need to do anyway.
So tell us a little more about what some of those best management practices are that you can support.
Well, one thing is like we've talked about cover crop. If you haven't done no-till in the past, we can cost share on no-till planting, on fencing out our creeks and streams and everything, putting in waters to be able, because if you fence out the creeks, then you got to have a way to water your animals. So then it'll help to water that. Dry stacks for places to store your manure so you can apply it at the proper time. Those kinds of things.
How would you say the interest is in these programs?
It's very good because people are farmers. Farmers are always looking for, most farmers want to do these practices anyway. And if they have that little extra financial incentive to do it, it makes it able to do it. Because if you don't have a little bit of finance behind it, most of the time farming's not the most profitable way to go anyway. So that's why it's important to uh, make it as economical as they can, just to make it so they can afford to do it.
Do you have any favorite stories about people who you're able to help get started in this and the successes that they've seen?
I know that I've heard especially with the cover crops, that I know that that's because it started up more recently. Uh, we had been doing cover cropping for years, and now I hear a lot of conventional farmers that have started implementing the cover crops, and they have really, not only are they happy to have it covering the soil, but they talk to me about how much nitrogen that they save, that they don't have to put out on the soil in the spring. It just cuts down on their cost a lot more. You think of it as an expense to put that cover crop out there, but then when planting time comes and you don't have to apply nitrogen fertilizers to it, that makes a big difference.
So it sounds like to me it's an investment, but it takes a little bit of time to be able to make that investment because of just how the industry is.
Well, that's what farming is, an investment in the future, and we always hope that our investment pays off so we can keep on going at what we're doing.
So, and I think it's really an excellent point that you raise, is that there's a lot of farmers who use maybe more conventional methods, that once they learn a little bit more about this and what it can do for them, it really changes how they view what they do.
Oh, it definitely does. It definitely changes. And like I said, with the economics of it, then that gives them the push to do it and make it feasible to do, because some of them just are not financially able to do it, to have that money to invest in it to start with. So it helps a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's a really, really important point to be raised, is the ability to get people started and get people going in the existing economic situation is incredibly important. What difference do you think it would make if there was more of a public investment in terms of public funding in helping farmers begin to make these transformations on their farm?
Oh, it would make a huge difference, because like I said, farming is all about what getting through to the next year, and making it so that we can afford to keep on doing what we're doing. And so if we have a little bit of help from the general public to help to do those proper things, to improve the soils, it would be a tremendous advantage.
So one of the initiatives that CFSA is pursuing in North Carolina, the General Assembly, is a Healthy Soils Act. That the program that you talked about earlier, the Ag Cost Share, does focus a lot on some practices that benefit soil as well as water. But what this piece of legislation would do would to define what we mean by soil health. Talking about storing that organic matter and everything else that George has told us, but it would also make soil health a focus of the district specifically. And I'm really excited about that. And I just want to ask what you think would be possible if we are successful in this initiative.
Well, if we have this initiative, then it does gives the general public a chance in our legislative money to be able to put money into the farms that the farmers need to help them to survive and to do the right thing with farming to improve everything and help, not only to help climate change and everything in the world, but also to help farmers and help us to have healthy, good food to eat.
Oh, that's beautiful. So I can see that we're coming up on the end of our time together, but I wanted to turn it back over to you just to tell us if you want to say anything more about your farm, if you have any final messages you want to share before we part. The floor is yours.
Well, I'm just happy to have a chance to talk about what we do and look forward to hopefully be able to work with this program and to work with other farmers and to be able to get it on the ground to make everything so we can pass our world on and our farms on to the next generation as a viable planet then.
Wow, what an ending. I don't think we could get much better than that, to pass on both the world and our farms to the next generation, and connecting the land with the climate, with our well-being going forward. So I just want to thank you so much for talking with us and letting our audience know a little bit more about the importance of soil health and climate. And thank you again, and thanks to our audience. We look forward to seeing you at the next This Week at CFSA.